Welcome to the SHT podcast. This podcast is created by superhumans, for superhumans, and anyone else who wants to look, feel, and perform like a freaking badass. Your holistic health journey starts here. Rediscover how we...
Yeah!
Paul, sit your ass down.
Hey guys, it's Sonia and...
Paul or T? What do I go by
What's
now?
your name?
What's up?
Hi guys. Today we were talking about foods to avoid.
That's right. Foods to avoid, why, what, how, and anything else we can come up with.
Hell yeah.
All right, let's go do it.
I feel like I was going to tell you something before we started, and now I totally forgot. I was like, I'm going to say
We have a lot to talk about because we haven't seen each other in a
I
while.
know. Okay, so...
But I did call you every day that you were
did,
sick.
and I appreciate that. Thank you. And I tried calling back. Did you ever get my voicemails?
If I did, I don't remember listening
Okay,
to them.
cool.
I need to go back. I'm actually not good at that because I'm making such an effort to stay unplugged, and then if my phone's on me, it's in airplane mode because of the
That's
EMS
so
and
great.
radiation. Like I'm just like, it's just part of the deal now. Like,
Yeah, I know.
And I think I want us to re-record my little greeting to
Okay.
say something about that.
Oh, I'm down.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
because
what-
when I would leave you a voicemail, I'd go, that woman sounds very familiar. It's me.
It's you.
No, you got the card and the little book.
Oh
Did
my
you
God.
read the book? Was it
I started
hilarious?
on it, but like my family is like super prim
Oh,
and proper.
okay. Mhm.
Or no, I shouldn't say prim and proper.
No, but
if they're listening to this, they would be like, "What? What are you talking about?"
Yeah.
now?" But it was a book that I wanted to save and do here, so no. But I loved the first few pages. It was funny as hell.
was
Oh
like,
my God,
what?
yeah. But
Yeah.
your card made me cry. I think I said that in a voice
yeah,
message
you
or a
did.
text or something like that. Your card made me cry.
Good.
And at first I thought it was Ryan, so I wasn't sure because I saw Ryan sign on the side. I was like, damn, when does he cry in my office?
Right?
And I was like, oh wait, this is. And then I started over again. So,
Yeah, he just had to tell you have a nice butt. That's pretty much it.
All right, I'll take that.
Yeah.
As much as I can hear it, I'll take that.
Paul, you have a great butt.
Thank you so
You're
much.
welcome.
You have an athletic butt.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Down.
You have an
Thank you.
athletic butt.
I
Yeah.
love that. Learning how to squeeze it even when I just stand. It's wonderful.
There we go.
Balance. So,
Talking about balance, that's a good segue.
hey, no, for real. Today, we're talking about one side of balance of our SHT community, which is foods to avoid.
That's right. Foods to avoid, and we'll talk about why, what, how, and hopefully it's going to be a short and sweet little deal.
Yeah,
You know,
we're
30
gonna
30 minutes or something like that.
Yes, so let's get to it. So what are we talking about when we talk about eating real food?
Okay, so we want to talk about why we are talking about this.
Yes.
Okay, so what are we trying to do when we eat real food? In a very simplistic way of looking at things, we want to make sure that we're giving the body the nutrients that it needs to contribute to everything that happens inside the body, to build this beautiful body, your beautiful body,
Thank you.
our beautiful butts,
Yes.
right? So we want to eat in a way that gives the body everything that it needs to contribute to everything that needs to happen. And then we also want to eat in a way that nurtures our concept of self-sufficiency, which we can also think metabolic flexibility and fat burning, but that's not all there is to it, which is why we like to call it self-sufficiency. So,
Yes.
so the reason that we eat real food is that we want nutrients and we want to nurture self-sufficiency, or eat in a way that nurtures self-sufficiency. So the reason that we come up with our list of foods to avoid is probably because they either don't contribute to nutrients, they inhibit self-sufficiency and metabolic flexibility and fat burning, or the toxicity component does some damaging effects over the long term.
All three of those
along
are so
lines.
important.
Yeah.
So,
Yep, that's it. Yep.
so can you talk about how that works within our personal standpoint? Maybe
The body or
digest it a little more.
something?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So our body is made up of cells.
Yep.
How many cells? I don't know. Like it's estimated billions to trillions.
Yeah.
Okay. So our body is made up of cells. Those cells make up tissues, which make up organs, which make up organ systems, which make us us. But at the very basic cellular level, the cells need certain things to function properly. They need nutrients. They need to be able to detoxify. They need the absence of toxins, and then they also need to be able to create energy in an optimal way. So that's why we come up with this whole idea. Like we need nutrients, we need to nurture self-sufficiency and metabolic flexibility, and we need to minimize and remove as many toxins as possible. And what happens is if we don't eat the right kind of nutrients, if we eat a lot of toxins, then we end up causing damage at the cellular level, which contributes to tissue damage and organ system damage, which contributes to all the different symptoms that we experience, and those symptoms get grouped together and get called a disease, and that's how we have disease.
It is a snowball effect.
That's right, absolutely.
Really.
Now let me ask you this.
Okay.
From a personal standpoint, what is it you're trying to do with real food?
Okay.
And eating the right things and not eating the right things.
Okay.
What are you
So first off,
what's important to you?
First off, it was weight loss for me. All right. Then I got into this.
So weight loss,
SHT
we'd say everybody. It's important to everybody.
Very
Weight loss,
much.
or maybe even more accurate in our realm would be body composition.
Exactly.
Right?
Yep.
Fat
Which
loss, body
contributes to feeling good. Longevity of health is definitely what I'm trying to do. I'm not trying to be in a nursing home when I'm 70, 80, 90 years old. And just I'm trying to have my body go back to its ancestral roots, to what it's biologically made to do, and to be self-sufficient.
Awesome. So I think almost every one of those things is what most people are looking for. Optimal body composition, feeling good, performing good, longevity, quality of life.
Yep.
Or maybe quality of life, most important, right?
Yes.
So from a very personal, selfish standpoint, this is why we're saying don't eat these foods. We're not trying to make things difficult and say, oh, we just don't want you to eat wheat and like, and we know that may be difficult for a lot of people. We're not trying to make your life difficult. We're trying to give you some guidelines to help you feel amazing, perform amazing, look your best. And so by definition, these things that we're recommending avoid aren't contributing to those things in any way. So.
I agree. And hear us out. When you cut those foods, when we're telling you to avoid these foods, it's not, like Paul said, making your life more difficult. It's not trying to make this more difficult. You'll actually realize that it's easier once you get that down.
You know what? I like that. I like that because it's like you have your lane that you have to stay in.
Exactly.
You have your guidelines. It's like, okay, we've taken the guesswork out of it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
All right. So I want to summarize. Like, what are the main ones? So because as we go through this, we're going to talk about each food to avoid or food group to avoid, and a little bit of some examples and maybe some why. But just to give a brief overview.
Yep.
Excess sugar.
Yeah.
All right. Artificial sweeteners.
Yep.
Refined and processed foods. Most grain-like seeds. We need to throw caution to seeds in general. We'll talk a little bit about that, and we'll talk more about it in future episodes. The toxic fats and oils, low-quality manipulated dairy, and then GMOs.
Yes.
And then, of course, there's all kinds of extra stuff that we could throw in there as far as like chemicals and preservatives and stuff, but that's like the ballpark of what we're trying to cover today. So,
good. We need to hear this. So let's start with the excess sugar. Talk to us about why, give us examples. That would help a lot.
All right, so let's talk about sugar in general. One thing I love about the SHT way is that we are not low carbers.
No.
We're strategic carbers.
Yep.
But I think it helps to understand what we mean by carbs. So our carbs, of course, are sugar-based stuff and starch-based stuff.
Yep.
We're strategic carbers. In one sense, it's like we want to make sure that when we consume sugar, we're getting it from real food sources or things that they come naturally packaged in. And if we're doing that, like I've never liked the idea of giving people a grams of sugar per day amount, because if we're eating things that are measuring grams of sugar in the first place, it's probably not the best thing to be consuming.
No.
But if we're eating things like fruit and potatoes and sweet potatoes and white rice, then that's a little bit different. It kind of auto-regulates as long as we measure out the amounts for the day, right? So the first thing that we would say is like you want to consume sugar and or starch from real food sources, which are mainly going to be what?
Fruits, honey.
Any kind of fruits. Honey is a superfood. Honey comes packaged with a lot of other beneficial things.
Yep.
And then our starchy things, like potatoes. And plantains and sweet potatoes and all that kind of stuff. So now in the sugar realm, though, we do want to understand some basic guidelines. So we want people to have an awareness component built into this. So if I have information on the amount of sugar in a food, because we do have a lot of access to things that might otherwise be considered like suboptimal. So for instance, we have approved ice creams.
Yes.
What are some other examples of that have a lot of sugar? Like maybe chocolatey type things.
Yeah, approved chocolate bars.
Like the chocolate bars. Some of them varying sugar content. The peanut butter cups, the almond butter cups, dark chocolate type things. So we do have access to sweets. So when we're consuming those things, or even when we're not, I was thinking about this earlier. So even if I'm someone that's like considering this way of doing things, but I'm still going to be doing my Coke and my Gatorade and Powerade, I want to have an awareness of how much sugar I'm consuming, because that will blow your mind, right? Yeah. So most people don't understand what a gram looks like. So if I tell you, like all of us as human beings have about a teaspoon of glucose running through the bloodstream at any given point in time. And if you're not familiar with glucose, most people that's synonymous with blood sugar. So if
Yeah.
I have about a teaspoon, most people understand what. If you don't know what a teaspoon looks like, you need to spend a little bit of time in the kitchen.
Yeah, just a little bit. You have 2 sizes of spoons in your kitchen.
Yeah,
Big
teaspoon
one,
and
tablespoon.
That's right.
Little one, teaspoon.
So if I have about a teaspoon going through my bloodstream,
Yeah.
if I eat anything in excess of that, my body has to manage it back down to about a teaspoon, and it's not a completely accurate, analogy, but it's very, very close. So then I want to know how much I'm consuming, because the more I consume in excess of that, the more my body has to use its resources, and the more I lose my ability to use those resources in the future, right?
Over time.
Over time.
Yes.
That's how we lead to insulin resistance and all the different blood sugar handling issues that we have. So if a teaspoon, if labels give us information in grams, then we want to understand how many grams it takes to equal a teaspoon. Then that kind of makes some visual sense to us. So how many grams equals a teaspoon from your knowledge going through our program?
Lord.
What?
5.
Close.
4.
4.
Okay, 4. 4.
It was an F word.
It was an F word.
Yeah.
5 and 4.
4 grams. 4 grams equals a teaspoon. Okay. So now, if I decide to do something, first of all, if I'm doing fruits and starches and stuff, we have different guidelines around how much to consume of that. So that takes care of itself. But if I'm doing an ice cream or, a chocolate bar, or if I'm doing something that's even out of the realm and I'm looking to make a healthier change in my life, then let's just bring an awareness component into this. Let's turn that label around and look and see how many grams, or divide that number 4 into the grams, and that will give us the amount of teaspoons. And so if it has, let's say we're looking at a cup of ice cream and it has 24 grams of sugar, divided by 4 is what?
6.
All right, good job. That was really easy and quick.
I love division and multiplication, okay, people?
A lot of people, because we're so used to phones and calculators, they just or maybe it's because being put on the spot. But.
Probably.
So
6.
in a cup of ice cream, if I have 24 grams of sugar, 6 teaspoons, that's 6 teaspoons in that.
Yeah.
If I have that awareness brought into this, then at an unconscious level, I'm probably going to err on the side of not doing as much as I normally would.
Yes.
Because I think most people could easily sit and eat a whole pint of ice cream without thinking about it. But now if I'm like, holy moly, there's 6 grams in each one of these cups, and there's 4 cups in this pint, is that right? 4 cups in a pint? Or 2 cups?
Don't put me on the spot.
Okay,
I'm just kidding.
Whatever, it's still a
I
lot.
did my division, okay? I'm done for the day.
You got your math brownie points for the day.
Thank you.
All right, so that's our rule of sugar. The rule is we don't really have a rule, except we want to ideally eat sugar that comes from real food sources, packaged with other nutrients. And if we're participating in something that is like an approved option, we want to know how much we're consuming. And even if we're outside of this realm and we're even considering being healthier, just managing how much sugar you consume in a day is going to be helpful for you.
Ideal for sure.
All right, and then if we were to give a guideline, I would say 25 to maybe 35 grams of sugar in a day.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's doable for most
In addition to
people.
like the starches and stuff.
Yes. I mean, when you break that down, that's not limiting you much.
Yeah.
To be honest.
It gives you something.
It does.
Yeah, and that's another thing I love about our way of doing things
Yeah.
is we have access to things, and it's not restrictive.
We're not telling you not to eat sugar.
Yep.
You have it,
Yep.
you know?
Yep.
So this is my favorite, and I have a story to tell you, but I want you to break down artificial sweeteners.
Okay, so artificial sweeteners, the popular ones that most people understand and know are going to be Splenda, Equal, Sugary, Sweet and Low, a new one, Sunnit, which is this one.
Is that new?
Well, it's kind of relatively new. They find it in a lot of sugar-free gums.
Oh, okay.
So artificial sweeteners, there used to be a time that a lot of us in this realm would transition people from doing really high sugar stuff to the no sugar, low sugar versions of those things, because we felt like carbs were a problem.
Yeah.
And we would see some short-term benefits because they would lose weight and they'd feel a little bit better, especially if they're eating doing that in the context of eating real food. So say they went from a lot of Cokes and Gatorades to Diet Cokes and then eating real food as well. We'd see some transitional benefits, but long-term, we know that these artificial sweeteners are going to cause some major problems. So we're talking about things like migraines, headaches, dizziness, severe digestive issues for a lot of people. And then we had mentioned before, we had talked about before, long-term health issues are going to be like kidney issues. We see a lot of correlation with cancer. And then also we diminish our body's ability to actually understand what sweet means.
Yeah.
So we damage the taste buds in our mouths.
Yeah.
And we also give the body this expectation of sweet, which is why we see in a lot of studies, although they're observational, this correlation with Diet Cokes and diet drinks in general, and people still gaining a lot of excess body fat. So what was the story that you're going to tell me?
Oh my gosh. So been studying up on this energy drink that Ryan and I are looking into, which I'm like, no, we're just not going to do it. But it says sugar-free on on the label, yet when you turn it over and read the ingredients, a major one is sucralose. So an artificial sweetener.
Yep.
So you just have to be careful.
Yeah.
Okay, if you read the label and it says sugar 0, just be aware of ingredients, really.
Yeah.
Just,
usually, yeah, exactly. And that's a really good point, because usually to get, like, that's a term that a lot of people resonate with when they see sugar-free and low-calorie,
Yep.
you know, because there's so much awareness around sugar these days. And what we'd say is, no, sugar's fine. You want real food versions of sugar. But usually these low-calorie, no-calorie versions are going to be, you know, toxified with something else, you know, like an artificial version of that. So then if you had a choice, like, what would you do if, like, you were just, like, dead set on having a Red Bull?
Yeah.
Would you do a regular Red Bull, or would you do a Red Bull, what do they call it? No Red Bull? Or
I don't even know.
A zero
no
Red
calorie
Bull or
Red
like
Bull?
Yeah.
Oh, Lord. I have to choose.
Tough question. Yeah.
Wouldn't the real one be shoved with sucralose too?
No.
No?
No.
Then I would probably...
I think they actually use cane sugar now.
Oh, really?
So,
Then I'd probably do the cane sugar.
Yeah, because your body understands how to use sugar.
It recognizes cane sugar.
Yeah, it understands how to use sugar. So if you're going to do one of those things, we'd say do the regular one that the body understands versus, but, you know, obviously things like that we don't really need in our realm. So,
no, I'm good.
Cool.
I have coffee.
All right, so take away from that, artificial sweeteners are something that we absolutely avoid. I would consider it a deal breaker. So if you see an artificial sweetener in the ingredients in anything, like, it's completely off.
Don't touch it with a 10-foot pole.
Yeah.
Okay, so going to processed sweeteners, all that artificial stuff, how about refined and processed foods? What should we avoid in that realm?
Just refined and processed foods in general.
Period.
Yeah, I would say if it has a list of ingredients, especially of things that we're already trying to avoid in the first place, wheat, toxic fats and oils, artificial sweeteners, I mean, you know, like the obvious stuff. Well, this may not be obvious, so protein powders.
Yeah.
Even if they're made with good quality ingredients, we would say, thinking back to, I'm not sure if we mentioned this before, but like with the sugar, the whole, you know, getting sugar from a real food source, protein powders are fractionated, shelf-stable, isolated versions of something else, like from milk or something, right? So we'd rather just eat real food. So powders and things we're typically against. And then obvious things like Hot Pockets and, you know, like things that have a lot of ingredients, Cheetos and stuff like that. You know? So refined and processed foods, just a little bit of common sense. Yep.
If you can't pronounce it, don't eat it. Okay, so a lot of people have questions about seeds or grain-like items. We have a lot of wheat craze going on. So how about the grain-like products?
So seeds in general, we talk more about this when we talk about our foods to consume, and we'll probably do an episode down the road where we talk nothing about seeds, because that's a really fascinating topic. We do have a class that we offer every year. It's called Not All Seeds Are Created Equal, and we talk about the spectrum, right?
Yeah.
So in general, we just need to understand that human beings' digestive systems don't do well with seeds, because seeds are a plant's next generation. And the plant is trying to make sure that that seed grows into another plant, and so the plant is typically going to build some protection mechanisms into that seed.
Yeah.
And it depends on what kind of seed it is as far as how much protection is where. You know, so we have hard-shelled nuts, and we have legumes, and we have slippery seeds that are in things like cucumbers, and then we have grains, right?
Yeah.
So we would say avoid most grain-like seeds, because usually when people are consuming grains, they're going to be whole grains.
Yeah.
And when you're consuming whole grains, you're consuming the shell of the grain, including what's inside. And so therefore you're getting all the protection that the plant is putting into that seed.
Yeah.
And for most people, grains are going to cause a lot of digestive issues. They're going to be low in nutrients. They're going to be higher in anti-nutrients. And so they're not going to be contributing to the things that we're looking for from real food. Now, like we said, there's a spectrum of seeds. So grain-like seeds to us means definitely the gluten-containing grains. That's going to be wheat, spelt, rye, and barley. And then I would just say whole grains in general is something you have to be really, really cautious about.
Yeah.
And then we have within that realm some gray areas type stuff, which we talk more about in our seeds class, which is things like oats and corn and brown rice. You know, so you and I both know we're fans of white rice, because white rice is stripped of that protective shell, which is what makes brown rice brown. And we consider white rice a little bit safer because it doesn't have the anti-nutrients associated with the shell. So big takeaway, I think, from the seeds pieces, humans don't do well on seeds in general, so we don't want to eat a lot of seeds. When we eat seeds, it's probably going to be more of the hard-shelled nuts than anything else. And the grain, especially whole grain type seeds, are things that we probably want to avoid, because by definition, we're eating the shell, and we don't want to eat the shell of a grain.
That's great,
Yep.
honestly, because a lot of people have a wheat mindset,
Yeah.
or a wheat is better than white, or all of that. But
Yeah, you know what's great about that though? I remember when I first started doing talks here in Vegas, back 2012. You know, I was following William Davis, the guy that wrote Wheat Belly, but it had just come out, or maybe it hadn't come out yet, but it came out at some point within those first couple of years that I was doing my talks and stuff. But it was a hard sell to get people to understand that wheat might not be good for you.
Yeah.
You know, but everybody understands that white bread is not good for you and white flour.
Yeah.
But what's the difference between white flour and whole wheat flour and whole grains? It's all made from the same thing.
Yeah, it
They just
really
give
is.
a different name and it's different levels of processing. But the flawed logic is, if wheat is better than white, that doesn't mean wheat is good. It just means that it might be better, less damaging, but what we're looking for is optimal. So,
Yeah. Yeah,
About to go off on a tangent.
No, you're good.
Yeah.
I'll cut you off there. And then we'll start talking about, how about those things that people, originally cook with? I can't
Fats and
believe
oils and
it's
stuff
not
like that.
butter.
Oh,
the
yeah, yeah,
fats, the oils, how about
Well, I mean, why are
all of
people
that?
using those alternatives? Why are people going for, I can't believe it's not butter?
I mean, it's
and
advertised as, low fat, no sugar,
a
better
low-fat
for you.
fat.
A
Yeah,
low
that makes
fat
a lot
fat.
of sense. Yeah.
Which,
So,
yeah.
all right. So when it comes, one of our foods to avoid is our toxic fats and oils and highly processed fats and oils.
Yep.
So let me make sure I can remember everything I want to talk about here.
Okay.
So number one, same concept as with the sugar, right? We want things that are coming from real food sources and traditionally prepared. So we want traditional fats that we understand where they came from, right? So man-made fats, hydrogenated, partially hydrogenated, and the fake butters and spreads are going to be completely worthless because either they're man-made or they're made with things that we're not going to agree with anyway. They're going to be really highly processed, like some vegetable oils and things. What's another thing that I wanted to cover with that? Oh, well, I mean, that's the other piece of it is it's like you want traditional fats, but then you also want to understand the difference between saturated fats, monounsaturated fats, polyunsaturated fats, and which fats are dominant in those different things because typically the traditional saturated monounsaturated fats are going to be more stable and resistant to damage, and things that are high in polyunsaturated fats are going to be extremely delicate. And so that's another reason that we choose the fats that we like to consume when we avoid some of these other fats. So things like vegetable oil, canola oil, corn oil, like you could say, okay, well, corn is kind of real food-ish, so why would corn oil not be okay? Well, because of what we just said, it's got to be highly processed to extract oil from corn. I mean, you got to have a lot of corn. It's got to be highly processed, and in that processing, because a lot of the fats in the corn are polyunsaturated, they probably get damaged.
Yeah.
And the same thing with our other ones. So things like soybean oil, vegetable, grapeseed, safflower, and rice bran oil.
Oh yeah.
So rice bran oil,
There's rice bran oil?
Oh yeah, that's
that?
unfortunately that's what. Well, I'm not going to use any company names. I was about to use one of these companies that we would otherwise love to get some of their food from.
Yeah.
Cooks their stuff in rice bran because in some realms, like rice bran oil is considered somewhat healthy, but rice bran oil is oil that is extracted from the bran of rice. Which in and of itself doesn't have much oil anyway. To extract it, you have to have a lot of rice bran. And we already said there's a lot of anti-nutrients in rice bran, in the shell and the hull and the husk, So,
wow.
Now, in the toxic fats and oils realm, another little caveat we like to point out, this is a recent introduction into our way of doing things. We used to say sunflower oil was off the table. And again, you might think, okay, well, sunflower seeds are okay, right? Yeah, sunflower seeds are okay. But oil extracted from them, because the oil is high in polyunsaturated fats, in that extraction process, you damage those fats and you make it unhealthy. But now we have high stearic acid and high oleic acid sunflower oil. So if you see something that has that as an ingredient, that would be appropriate because that is now sunflower oil that is dominant in monounsaturated fat, so it's a little bit more stable.
So would you say if you were to read an ingredient list off of a product, if it just says sunflower oil, should you avoid it?
Great question. I would say yes, because people that make it with high stearic or oleic are very proud of that because they know some people are looking for it. And they will put that on there.
Cool.
So there are some products that are close. Like there's some cookies and crackers and things that are really, really close as far as ingredients, but there's sunflower oil in it. And to me, if you're trying to be optimal, like it's something that I would avoid.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. That's good to know.
What else in the fats and oils realm? I feel like there's something on the tip of my tongue that I wanted to cover just then. Traditional fats. Yeah,
How
we can
about plant-based spreads?
Well, same thing, because most of them, if you look at the ingredients, are going to be made with fats that we don't agree with.
Yep.
So if it's anything that we just listed, I mean, if it's something made with olive oil, I guess it would be okay, and avocado oil, but that's a topic for a future session.
For sure,
where
for
we're
sure.
cover the fats and things that we agree with. So to just bring it back, hydrogenated, partially hydrogenated, any of the fake butters or spreads that are trying to mimic themselves as butter, we don't want fake anything. We want the real deal.
Eat butter.
Yeah, and then the highly processed oils, vegetable, canola, corn, soybean, safflower, grapeseed, and rice bran, and then sunflower oil can be okay.
Margarine.
Margarine is hydrogenated.
Yeah.
Yeah. Margarine
Avoid.
and Crisco are hydrogenated.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Cool.
We want traditional fats.
Yes.
That we recognize the source, we know the source, and that our ancestors have been consuming.
Yep.
So yeah, absolutely.
All right.
Cool.
So we've talked about fats. So this is a good transition to talk about dairy. What dairy should we avoid?
All right, so we like dairy. You know that we're big fans of dairy, okay? And even the people that don't do well on things like cheese and yogurt in our realm, like most people are going to do okay on butter. Most people are going to do okay on heavy cream in their coffee. Some people are a little bit sensitive to it. But if you tolerate it, we'd say dairy is going to be extremely beneficial. But when it comes to dairy, we want to avoid low-quality dairy. So the whole point in consuming dairy is in the fat. The fat is where the nutrients are. The fat is where the medium-chain triglycerides are, which are really easy for the body to digest and use for energy. And so when I make a dairy product low-fat or non-fat, I'm missing the point of consuming the dairy product in the first place, okay? So we want the regular, real versions of those dairy products. We want the full-fat versions. Also, it helps to have a really good quality when it comes to dairy. So we've noticed over the past, 5-6 years, people going through our progressions that they feel like they're dairy intolerant. Well, if they're eating Daisy sour cream from Walmart, that's different from Strauss sour cream that's organic, from pasture-raised cows, and people notice a huge difference. Like all of a sudden they can tolerate things that they couldn't tolerate before simply by changing the quality. So we want to avoid low-quality dairy that's been manipulated, low-fat, non-fat, and then we also want to make sure that it has a decent level of quality associated with it. We'd say a minimum hormone antibiotic-free, ideally organic or grass-fed or better.
Yeah. Love that.
Cool.
Okay. That's a great guideline.
How are you doing with dairy right now?
Not bad.
Okay.
Butter I tolerate.
Yep.
Heavy cream has been great.
When we first started visiting, didn't you have a hard time with butter? Even just butter, right?
Even just butter.
Okay. So
butter
that
and
means
better.
your system has strengthened. That's a really good thing. That's awesome.
Dubliner is still a little iffy.
Okay. How do you notice it?
I swell up a little bit.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
All right. That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if ladies, you want to get rid of bloating, test dairy.
Test everything.
Test
is what
everything.
We would say.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is probably a better discussion for when we talk about foods to consume. But dairy gets a bad rap.
It really does.
It gets a bad rap, but it's a traditional ancestral food.
Yep.
Like we've been consuming dairy for a very long time. And in Dr. Weston A. Price's travels and teachings, like he said, most ancestral populations consume dairy to some degree.
For sure.
The problem is that most of our digestive systems and systems in general are hypersensitive to doing the wrong thing over decades of time, and so we can't tolerate all the things that we could. But also, like I see a ton of people that don't do good on spinach because of the oxalates. They don't do good on tomatoes because it's a nightshade. They don't do good on what else? Various kinds of sugar and starches. Because of certain anti-nutrients. So it's like everywhere within the real food realm, we see some potential for some problems.
Yeah.
It's just that within the real food realm, we have to learn how to test ourselves for these different things. I do really good on dairy, and I know a lot of people that do, and I know a lot of people that don't. But I also know a lot of people that don't do good on potatoes and don't do good on rice or something.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. Fast forward from ancestral to nowadays, we have GMOs.
Yeah. What does that stand for?
Genetically modified organisms.
Okay. Cool. All right. I promised I wouldn't put you on the spot too much. All right.
You made me do math. You made me.
You're doing good.
Thank you.
All right. So. GMOs, genetically modified organisms. What's really cool is like when I first started doing my talks here in Vegas, again, 2012, 2013 timeframe, organic was not even really that popular. For a lot of people, I had to explain what organic was. Nobody knew what a GMO was. Butter was a hard sell.
Really?
I had to go through a whole conversation about the benefits of traditional saturated fats and things. And nowadays, almost, if I ask in a group of 100 people, how many people have heard of GMOs, I could say 90% of them, something like that. So GMOs, I'm going to read this as a definition from the Non-GMO Project Verified website, okay? Genetically modified organism is a plant, animal, microorganism, or other organism whose genetic makeup has been modified in a laboratory using genetic engineering or transgenic technology. This creates combinations of plant, animal, bacterial, and virus genes that do not occur in nature or through traditional crossbreeding methods. Okay, so that's a pretty comprehensive definition, and really, you know, sometimes I feel like I want to have a lot of confidence in because we've learned so much from science. We've evolved a lot, you know. So there are some things that we have created and done that can benefit us as mankind, but when it comes to manipulating nature and foods that we're trying to consume, you have to be really careful about it because you don't know how that's going to respond inside the body. And now we're starting to see a lot of evidence that it behaves really badly inside the body and contributes to all kinds of problems.
Over time, of course.
Yeah. So a really good resource for genetically modified organisms is the Non-GMO Project website. And we'll put some links to that, nongmoproject.org. And you can go there and you can learn like all the ins and outs, you know, the main things to avoid. We're going to summarize it here though. So we always want to avoid canola. Because now in Whole Foods you'll see some dishes made with organic non-GMO canola. Okay. So we always want to avoid canola.
Always.
We'd say avoid most soy unless it's soy lecithin as an emulsifier. Like sometimes you'll see some chocolate bars with some soy lecithin or something like that. We don't see soy lecithin being a huge problem, but soy in general is almost always going to be genetically modified. Sugar beets. I don't think you're ever going to buy sugar beets, but the implication here is that if you see an ingredient on something that does not specify cane sugar, then guaranteed it's genetically modified beet sugar.
Interesting.
So that's where you're going to see the sugar beets show up. Okay? So when reading ingredients, if it just says sugar, it's probably GMO beet sugar.
Interesting. Okay.
Alfalfa. I don't know. Who eats alfalfa?
Honestly, I haven't heard that in a hot minute.
I know, right? It was back in some health movement there, wasn't it?
Yes.
Back when I was a vegan, I think I sprouted alfalfa or something like that. So alfalfa, most of it's genetically modified, but we want to stay away from it anyway. So high fructose corn syrup. For sure. And then we'd say that there are some things in the real food realm that if we're going to purchase them or consume them, they need to be organic, which organic implies non-GMO as part of its definition, or non-GMO verified. So that would be corn. So we have some rules around corn. We'll talk about it at some point in the future. But most corn is going to be genetically modified BT corn, and they have some other versions that have come out. Papaya, most people don't know that if you buy conventional papaya, in many cases it's going to be genetically modified papaya. Same thing with yellow summer squash and zucchini, which if you buy them at the grocery store, most people, again, it looks like a normal summer squash and zucchini. If it's not listed as organic or non-GMO, you're getting a GMO product.
That's crazy.
I know, right? Kind of sad, right?
I know.
So, and then I was mentioning corn. So this is so there's new varieties of corn that have come out. So this is where science is trying to do a good thing. Crazy? New varieties of corn that they've created. Science is trying to do a good thing. So they genetically modified corn for drought and stress tolerance, which means that it can survive in places that don't have much water. So that sounds like a good thing, but it's still genetically manipulated. And we don't have long-term tests to determine like how that affects the human body. And then also we have some corn that's been genetically modified for increased lysine content. So most of the grains that we feed some of the grain-fed animals that we, are in the concentrated feeding operations are very low in lysine, and most of these animals need a decent amount of lysine to function properly. And so they've genetically modified corn to have higher lysine content, which we'd say like we shouldn't be feeding corn to these animals anyway. So. But that's just some examples of some new GMO versions that have come out recently. So.
Oh my goodness. So what's our big takeaway from all of these foods to avoid? Okay, so foods to avoid, remember, our main goals: give the body the nutrients that it needs to contribute to structure, function, and form, right? We want to nurture self-sufficiency everywhere we can get it. We talk more about that in future episodes, I'm sure. And we want to make sure that we're aware of toxicity exposure, especially through food. So if we're recommending these foods to avoid, that means that they do not contribute to nutrients that we're looking for, and or they do not contribute to self-sufficiency, and or they have a toxic burden that's going to inhibit the body's ability to use other foods and nutrients properly. And so the foods to avoid, as far as our personal goals go, if we're trying to look for our optimal body composition, optimal health markers, optimal performance,
quality of life and longevity, that's another reason we want to avoid
Yes.
these foods. And just keep in mind that with most of these things that we just talked about, in the SHT way of doing things, we have alternatives that are made with the right ingredients.
Yes.
We have sources of sugar that are great. We have bread and crackers and cookies and
Yes.
desserts, and we have the right kind of fats.
Yes.
You know, so it's not that we're giving this list of things to make things super restrictive. We're just saying with most of these things, you just have to know what to swap those out with.
Exactly.
And that's what we'll cover in the future.
I love that. We are not taking things away from you. Don't feel like it's a deprivation thing. It is definitely just telling you there are better ways to do it to optimize your health.
Yeah. So when we say, you know, avoid grain-like seeds, especially the gluten grains, that implies no wheat, breads, pastas, pastries, and things like that. But we do have breads, pastas, and pastries
Yes.
that we can consume if it's made with the right ingredients.
Exactly.
You know?
Exactly.
But most people find they don't miss that stuff anyway.
Oh, amen.
Once they get
I
into
don't.
being a real foodie.
No bread, no pasta, no none of that for a hot minute.
Yeah,
And I
don't even
miss
care about it.
I
Don't
miss
even care about it. Like, the goal going forward has got to be being a real foodie.
Yes.
And I would not consider pasta and stuff like that real food.
Nope.
So, is that it?
Yeah.
I think we did good on time too, right?
I love it. I love it.
All
This
right,
is
cool.
going to help the SHT community so much.
Cool.
If you guys are stuck in a grind and you don't know what to get from the grocery store, let's play this on the way over there and let's talk it out.
And start reading labels.
Yes.
All right. So do the sugar math, which is how many grams?
4.
All right. Divided into 36 is what?
Oh,
Wait, no,
8.
It's
No.
32.
Dang it!
Wait.
No.
9.
No, we're wrong.
Yeah, 4 times 9. Right? All right, whatever. So do the math with the sugar. Read your labels and ingredients, the big things we're looking for, artificial sweeteners.
Yep.
And then the toxic fats and oils, the GMO type stuff,
Yep.
be aware of that. And we will have information on this as a resource
Yeah.
with the blog post associated with this.
Exactly.
Okay?
And if you have questions, connect with us on Instagram, connect with us on Facebook, reach out to Paul and I. We will answer whatever you need.
Yeah.
Okay? Don't
Make
be
a
shy.
future episode out of it.
Exactly.
All right.
All right. Good job, Paul.
We're outta here.
Thank you. You want to arm wrestle? I'm going to lose.
All
ding,
right.
ding, ding.
Okay.
All right. I love it.
Oh,
How long is it?
it wasn't recording.